Welcome to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. I'm your host, Margie Schaller, and I want to welcome you today and let you know that you are not alone. You may have made the decision not to drink alcohol, or at the very least, not at work-related events. But whether you've never been a drinker, or are in recovery, or made a health-related decision, we see you. In today's world, networking, socializing, celebrations, they all seem to happen over drinks, and the struggle can be real. Through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We are here to create a community where individuals like you who choose not to drink or drink less can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice. So it is my absolute joy and pleasure today to introduce you to somebody that I'm falling in love with more every day, Kim Bellis. And Kim is the founder of Sober is the New Cool. And we're just going to dive right in, Kim. So thank you for being with us.
Well, I'm so honored to be here, and I love what you're doing and creating a safe space for all women, no matter where they are, and especially in the workforce.
Yep, absolutely. So Kim, one of the things that I love to do is I love to get to know people and get to know sort of who you are and where you came from. So can you take us back to your upbringing and tell me a little bit about what your family was like and what role alcohol played in your upbringing?
So listen, I'm 63 years old, and so let's start with that. Back then, being a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, I mean, I'm going like to 1976, 1977. It was disco. It was, stay out all night, even, before you turned 18. And, it was acceptable. Everybody went out, everybody stayed up too late, everybody, it was kind of like party girl syndrome, but nobody really looked down upon it because everyone was doing it, right?
I mean, I remember my parents would have cocktail parties and they would hand me a sip of their drink.
Yes, and I remember even before I was like 16 or 17, when you were 13 or 14, you did get a little glass of wine at dinner. Like that was it was and my father was Slovak, which, right there and then being European descent, they did drink a lot. My mother was French Canadian. They didn't drink quite as much, but everybody, it was kind of like that was the norm, right?
Absolutely.
And so, when I was 16, 17, at 17, I went away to school in Florida to a private girls' school. Like I had a great life. I got, a beautiful upbringing. There was alcohol problems in my family. There were glimpses of, problems, but nobody spoke about it because everybody's father or mother or sister or brother or cousin, there all seemed to be some sort of issue, right? So fast forward, I'm 17, I get to go to Florida for school. And then it's like wide open, right? I mean, it's
Girls
just
gone
like
wild.
well, and it's 4 days a week of school. You're at the beach. I mean, it was like a private girls' college. And it was school in the morning, and then the rest was like, fun. And nobody really looked down upon it because, like I said, everyone was doing it. And then the drinking and driving, I think, is the thing that bothers me the most looking back because I did it so many times where, it happened where you'd been drinking and whoever was the person that was kind of the best in control drove home. And
The least
thinking
drunk.
about it now, it's awful. It really is awful to look back and think, or, I thank God every single day saying, thank God nothing bad happened, right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing I'm so grateful for that today that is no longer acceptable. The Ubers are more in, people have the designated driver. But even then, I remember if you did drink, if you had something big the next day and you couldn't, you were kind of like everybody was on you. Like, what's wrong? Come on, you'll be okay. And everybody goes to work hungover. When you think back at that concept, and I think one of the worst things is not remembering everything, missing so many memories. Now I'm 63 and I'm thinking, you know, what a shame to think that by getting bombed and having fun and not remembering that you're having a good time. Like life
Yeah.
is precious, right? And you don't want to forget the good things that happened that night or who you spoke to or who you met. But
Yeah.
I think for me, growing up, I never thought I was tall enough, skinny enough, pretty enough, smart enough.
Oh my
And
gosh, you're gorgeous.
well, but you see, that's what you see. What I saw was not that, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I was more on the shy side. And I thought that that liquid courage was the way to be seen and heard. And now looking back, I realize I'm much better communicator without alcohol than I ever was with it, right?
I mean, drinking was the old cool, and that's what I love about the name of your organization. I mean, I, at that same age, I was raised in Maryland, but the drinking age in DC was 18. And so at 16, I was able to get away with it. And I was going to bars and
Yes,
dancing on bars at 16 years old
yes,
because that was the cool thing to do. I
yes,
mean, and then driving home.
yeah.
It's insanity to think about those days.
I think that even now today, there's a bit of that in some of the universities and colleges. They're seeing a surge of that. And that's
Mm.
why I think it's so important that we really show people what it is to be healthy
And cool.
and cool. And you can
Yeah.
have a great time without all of the above.
So now move me into your 20s. So you get past the like raging party days, and then what happened with you?
Then I get married. I have two kids. Life is good. I had a mother, a father, and, great parents. Um, so life just, you get into that mom zone, right? But the drinking
Re
wine was
the mommy
every,
culture, right? The mommy wine culture.
yes. And every day I would drink, a little bit here, a little bit there. Was it a habit? Probably more so than not.
Mm.
But I remember, when after you have a baby, you're a little bit chubby, you decide you're going to go on a diet. All of a sudden, every diet I was looking at was, can I have wine on it? Right?
Mhm.
No. So, you look back at all that and you go, whoops, that's not so. But I wasn't the only one, right? It was, and I guess when you're in that, now I realize looking back, there was people in my life that did not drink much, but I was like on the side, like most probably in the middle. There were the ones that drank one glass of wine, and then there were the ones that got totally like crazy. And I was probably on the verge of in between the two. But just
Yeah.
because you don't drink till you're sick doesn't mean it's not an issue or it's not good for you. And but I never realized it. Then I'm 40. My dad passes away at 64. That
Mm.
was so sad. And I think that, the wine thing was like, oh, whatever. It just kind of,
Yeah, I mean, you deserve it at that point, right?
yeah. And your kids, and they come home from school, and you've lost your dad, and he was my best friend. You just make excuses, right? As you go along.
Hmm.
And you don't realize, I think that that's the worst part of it because it was so normal then that everybody just was like, okay, there was,
Yeah, I'm sure friends of yours came over to comfort you with a bottle of wine.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And not only that, to this day, people still have an issue with me saying that I don't drink and I wasn't good with booze. I don't feel good. I don't feel as positive. They all still kind of go, but you never really had a problem, right?
Hmm. I get that too.
Which is very interesting.
It is. Okay, so now you are a mom, and tell me about the big event that happened in your life.
So I have two boys, Matthew and Jack. Matthew's 13 years old, a fantastic football player. It's his passion. He loves it. We're out 5 nights a week, either practicing or, watching his games. From one day to the next, he has a grand mal seizure.
Mm.
Originally, everybody said, no, 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 it's just concussions. Don't worry about it. He can still play football. I mean, everybody, the coach, my husband wanted him to play. He wanted to play. And it
Of
wasn't
course.
until, right? It was like, okay. that's kind of the norm too. The football player getting hit, the concussions, right? So keep going, you're a man, keep going. And then, needless to say, after the second or third, we went back to the hospital, and then they realized, no, we're going to stop football. We'll see the trauma unit. And then they realized quickly that no, in fact, he was going to be epileptic for the rest of his life, and he
God.
would have to take medication.
Oh my God, at 13, what an absolute blow.
It was also, I wouldn't let him ride a bike because the first year we had about 11 seizures. And because they were getting used to the medication, and that was really difficult. And so our life, we did therapy, we did, psychiatric work, we did psychological work, we did all kinds of stuff. But how could you not be depressed? How could you not be sad? I mean, from one day to the next, it's all upside down. And so one day, finally, we get his meds under control. And I say, okay, Matt, you've got to get out. You've got to see your friends. We've got to find some kind of normalcy. There are
Mhm.
people in the world that have epilepsy, and we are going to live with this. We're going to fix this. And, as a mom does, right? And the third time he came home, it was 30 minutes again, come and get me. And he says, I don't fit in. And for some reason, I said, okay, this is crazy. You don't need wine or drugs to have fun. And as I'm saying it, I see this huge glass of wine in my hand. And I thought, wow, I'm such a hypocrite. So I said, right then and there, I'm going to stop drinking for 3 months. It was more to prove a point, right? Moms are always right kind of thing. And after 3 months, he looks at me and he goes, Mom, now you can be like everybody else and be normal.
Ah,
And then I said, okay, I'll do another 3 months. And that was just about 12 years ago. And I never touched another drink again.
out of the mouth of babes.
Yeah.
To the very idea that the definition of normal is to be able to drink like everybody else.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So in those early days, those first 3 months and then the second 3 months, like what were you experiencing along the way for yourself, both just not having the alcohol as part of your emotional support, but also in relationship to other people?
Well, one of the first things I had done, because I had quit smoking about 5 or 6 years before that for the last time, because I quit smoking 20 million times. So I was one of those. Because I'm an all or nothing girl. It's just that simple. And I had did hypnosis. So I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to give it a try, just if it takes the edge off, because it is like all of a sudden that's gone. There's an edge. But the worst thing for me was more every time we were thinking about going to a restaurant, which we didn't do often because Matthew was not, we were always worried if he was going to have a good day or a bad day. And, all of a sudden Italian restaurants was red wine, sushi was rosé. And all of a sudden, it was like, whew, like somebody just kind of slapping you every time. I was thinking, and then I thought, okay, I'm just going to stay away from everything. But the biggest problem was during the first year, if I had to attend something, everybody and everywhere I went, people would say, come in the corner. Nobody will know. He'll never know. Nobody needs to know. You don't have a problem. Have a little drink. And
Yeah.
I thought, if I'm 52 and this is happening to me socially, what is now he's 14. What is a 14-year-old going to do? How is he going to manage staying sober or not drinking? Because with his medication, it's one or the other, right? This is not a choice here.
Mhm.
And it was incredible. And I think that's kind of the thing, because everybody sees when you're out, it's normal to have a glass of wine or a martini or whatever it is, right?
Wow. So what did you say to those people and how did they react to that?
The first few times I have to say, I think most of my responses were, I could never lie to my son. And
Mm.
I used, as much as he used me, because he didn't want to talk about being epileptic, he would say to his friends, you can't bring alcohol into the house because my mother quit drinking for me.
Mm.
I used him that my son was sick, right? So that was, how could somebody argue with me saying that? No, right? Like that kind of cut the conversation quite short quickly. But as time went on, I guess I was so preoccupied with him being well and not being able to fix him. I was ready to do anything. And I loved him more than I ever loved myself.
Yeah, we do. We do with our kids. So you haven't lived in a bubble of not going to, gatherings or restaurants all these years. How did that transition start to expand and what were some of the things you learned to do?
Well, I think the first thing, we started Sober is the New Cool because he couldn't deal with having to talk about epilepsy and why he couldn't drink. So I decided I was going to make it normal, like talking about the sun, not to drinking. Right. So Sober's the New Cool is born. We don't know what we're doing. My sister makes a logo. We go on Facebook and away we go. And all
What
of a
did you think
sudden,
of that?
well, he was kind of like, really, it was like, okay, like there was no, because he just didn't want to go down that road of, I'll never be able to drink, I think also. And in the first year or so, we did have some hiccups where he had a few drinks with his medication and off we went back to the hospital. So
Yeah,
um
that's
that's
normal.
right.
Yeah.
And he's a teenager. So all of a sudden, because 12 years ago, nobody was really talking about this, I just got bombarded with questions and emails and messages from the UK. That was the first place. And I just
Interesting.
thought, okay, well, I'm just going to talk about it like I do. Because to me, it was like, I have to talk about this to make it normal for him. And it wasn't even about me at that point. Everything was so much about him and how to make his life better. And it was just like every time I thought, okay, I've done my thing or whatever, something would happen or I would meet somebody and it would put me on another path to just keep going.
Wow. At what point, or has there been a point where the shift has gone from this being about supporting him and changing the world for him to understanding what it's done for you?
I think in year 6, I was told from the doctors, the psychologists and psychiatrists, you have to let him live. You have to go away, even if it's an hour away, like in the country, and him go back and forth. He can drive now. And like I think not being in control was the hardest part for me at year 6. I could have ripped out anybody's glass of wine or drink out of their hand because now I'm no longer in control. I don't see what he's doing every single minute of the day. And being consumed by him, all of a sudden now it's on me, right?
Mhm.
And then I realized, wow, this is really hard because I'm not focused on him because he's not with me 24 hours a day. And that's where the shift really started to happen. And I just realized, I think too, along the way, slowly, I was always positive. I was always happy. But I realized that as time went, I learned to like myself better. I learned to live a full life as opposed to half a life, which now I see I was because I was capable of so much more. There were so many opportunities that in the last 10 years that have happened to me that would never have happened had I continued to drink.
Mhm.
It just wouldn't have happened. And the
Mhm.
people I met along the way, they're so creative, they're so authentic. And I think this sharing of me too and not being afraid of being judged. And I guess for me, sending affirmations out to people when they stop drinking was kind of affirming what back to me because I was finding words about them. I had a school teacher, Jackie. I'll never forget when I started with her, she said to me, there's nothing good about me. And I said, oh, Jackie, that's so wrong.
Ah,
6 months later, she sent me a text and she said, I can say 50 things about myself now, about who I am and
Oh,
what I am and my qualities. And she starts her day with her grade 5 students to this day, one row at a time. They all have to start the day with I am and something positive, one positive word,
wow.
you know. And it's incredible because we all forget the qualities we have. We see them in everyone else, but we forget. And it's hard to say, I love me, or I'm okay, or I'm smart, or I'm funny, or I'm sporty. So I start with words that are easy, and then we go down that I am blessed, I am loved, I am lovable. There's so many words, and when people have to say them, because the whole thing was, I send you one, you have to send me one back, or else
Mm.
it doesn't work because
Yeah.
that's their way of having to look. And I remember I had this other girl, Kelly Marie, and she's a nurse, and during COVID she wrote to me, she said, I'm a hard worker. I said, no, Kelly Marie, I said, you are dedicated. It means the
Oh,
same,
wow.
but dedicated. Her whole face changed because being a nurse during COVID, how could you not be anything but dedicated,
Mm,
right?
that's
So
powerful.
I think that's when the shift started to happen. I was helping others, but they were also helping me.
Yeah.
And it was hard
It reminds
times.
me, I during my last couple of years of drinking, it was just I was in a dark place. Just everything felt heavy and everything felt unmanageable and everything felt like I was very much in a victim place.
Mm.
And drinking was my only solution that I knew. And the more that I drank, the more that it seemed unmanageable. And it was just this downward spiral. And there was a lot of shame around it. I remember like really hiding how much I drank from everybody. And even my kids, because it was normalized in my household how mommy drank, didn't see it as a problem. And after I went to treatment and got back, I was driving with my son, who was maybe 10 years old, in the back seat. And boys don't talk to you face to face, right? Boys will talk to you when they're in the back seat. And so he finally sort of screws up his courage and he said, Mommy, did you get sober for me and my sister?
Yeah.
And I remember at the time thinking, I need to answer this very carefully. And what I ended up saying was, of course, I want to be the best mommy that I can for you. However, I also need to be the best me for me. And I think that just claiming that in that moment, I was maybe 5 months sober, claiming that in that moment for me was really set me on the path of that duality, of the wanting to be the best that I could for them and wanting to be the best for me. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time. And it has. It's been 19 years for me of working out what does being the best me for me mean.
I remember also at one point, I don't know what year I was at, but I remember my kids, I guess, there was something more difficult than other than Matthew going on. And I remember my kids, one of them saying to me, we know that when you say you're going to do something, you mean it. So
Mm,
my word of not drinking for Matthew turned into a safe place for everybody because
wow.
they knew if I said something, I was going to follow through, whether it was homework, whether it was being there for whatever they were going through. And that was, I think, a huge moment for me.
Mm. Yeah, we get these little mirrors in our life. And if we're willing to look at them, we really can learn some interesting things about ourselves.
Yeah.
But not when we're drinking. All I
No.
knew when I was drinking was just I was in a reaction mode, for sure.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was more that I hated confrontation so much that when somebody said something to me or hurt my feelings, I didn't want to talk about it. But then 3 weeks later, if I'd had a drink too much, then something would come out and it was like out of
Mm,
left field. It didn't make sense what was going on, right? And now I've learned to be able to say, I think also in those days, I never regretted what I said. I regretted how I said it.
yes.
And that was the biggest change for me is now when I say something, people can't say, oh, she had some wine. You know how everybody says that? Well, they
Yeah.
had wine. They didn't really mean what they were saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now let's fast forward to the present because you are just doing all kinds of exciting, amazing things. Tell me more about Sober is the New Cool and what it is that that is and what you do.
So basically, what I do is I don't know how it happens. People find me somehow, whether they're starting to not, get just maybe even be curious, like
Mhm.
sober October, one thing like that. We can start a conversation there. Sometimes people come and go and then come back. And then I either do the I am affirmations or I try and find people in their neighborhoods, especially now that COVID's over, right? To go to a sober event or to go just live. Because once you get sober, that's all great, right? But then you got to live. You've got to be able, like you guys are doing, go to an event where there's business and booze everywhere. Weddings, you can't even, they have maybe Diet Coke and something else. Like, I don't know how many
Oh,
times it's like, and I love San Pellegrino or bubbly stuff. That's hard. And in Canada, I don't find we're getting much better now. But 12 years ago, there were no non-alcoholic versions of any kind of drink, right?
right. It's lemonade or water.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that that's what I do. I attend a lot of different events. I create different events also. We're doing an international recovery walk next Saturday, the 28th of September. I have 30 countries around the world walking virtually, obviously. And it's basically to bring awareness. It's walk for wellness because recovery seems to be one of those taboo words a little bit. So
Mm.
I'm trying to shift it into a thing of why do we have to explain why we want to be well? That's the way. And it's walk for your mother, walk for your brother, walk for your neighbor. Just walk, right? And change this stigma of, feeling bad and hiding in a corner and feeling guilty and all these things that are happening. And I find that there has to be something bigger than me, whether it's God or the universe, call it what you will. But I always seem to be at the right place at the right time where Fashion Week, for example, I met a young woman that is all inclusive. She does a beautiful fashion show, and there's no alcohol served. And it was an
Wow.
incredible event. I was 62. I walked in Fashion Week, even if I'm 5'2" and not skinny. So that was quite something without alcohol because my nerves were shot. But the buzz in the room of 250 people with no booze was electric. I'd never
Oh,
felt that before in my life, that kind of feeling. So that's quite something. I do international walk, I do a walk in Central Park, and women come from all over the US for the white party and the Sober's the New White Party, cool white party that we do. And you know what? It's just a safe space. Everybody wears white. And for some reason, we have women from 20 to 75 or 80 that show up. And we talk about our addictions or how we got into recovery or where we are on our journey. And most of the time, somebody goes, me too. And right away, the shoulders, you see them, it's just like that
yes.
freedom and no judgment, right? So
Yes.
basically, that's what I do. And I just keep talking about sobriety. And now I'm really trying to make it more about wellness and living your best life. Because
I love
sobriety to
that.
me is just the first part of it, right?
Hmm.
Because then there's just endless opportunities of what you can achieve.
1,000%. And honestly, I mean, that's one of the things that really paints my journey and is informing what we're doing at Sober Life Rocks is that, we're not here to get people sober. Neither are you. Like, that's not our journey. But if somebody is sober, what we know is that now that you've taken away the thing that's masking the chaos, generally in that first year, the chaos is still going. And there's a lot that needs to be done to sort of figure that out. And then it's really understanding who am I? How do I want to show up in my life? How do I want to take care of myself differently? How do I want to be in relationship with other people? How do I want to show up at work? All of those things. And that's really, I think, for us, the gift that we want to be able to share with people is to celebrate, to uplift, to encourage, to give positive affirmations, all the things that you're talking about, because I'm super grateful that I got sober in AA. And I'm super grateful for the tools that I learned there, the people that were so incredibly supportive. For me, it didn't help me with my navigating my professional life. And it didn't help me with understanding what some of the nuances were. In our social situations, we can choose whether or not we're going to go to a New Year's Eve party where we know everybody's going to be getting smashed. We can choose whether or not we go to, the holiday picnic.
Yeah.
But when we're at work, we can't choose whether or not we're going to be taking our clients out for a fancy dinner where alcohol is expected. We can't choose whether or not we go to the national sales meeting. We can't choose whether or not we go to a conference and there's, the networking is done at a party. So how do we navigate that?
And it's scary.
It is scary. And it feels very isolating. So I want to know what is in the future for you. Are you there?
There. Sorry, I don't know what, I kind of disappeared, eh?
Yeah, you did, but that's okay. We'll edit that out.
Okay, so for me now, I'm trying to become a nonprofit, which I'm pretty sure it's all going to come together because I think there's a lot of work left to do. Because for me, I really think that sobriety is mental health is the true issue here. And the drugs and the alcohol are just the band-aid. And there's so much work to get to the next level and to keep creating. And I think it's by speaking out, doing speeches, going to events, showing the world. Like I remember the last time we were in New York, we were staying at a small boutique hotel and we were about 12 women in the lobby meeting for the very first time. And everybody was staring at us. Most of them had us over as the new cool t-shirt, but it didn't matter. And, we walked into the bar at the hotel and we all ordered like, bubbly drink or Coke or zero beer, some girls had. And it was like everybody's staring at you, right? Because you're in a bar and you've got to, because I wear my stuff out a lot now.
Me too.
Because I feel that it opens the conversation and it just makes it easy for everybody, right? Everybody goes, oh, it's not just me. And I think it's just a wellness thing. It's turning this into it's okay. And why should you not be proud of becoming the best version of yourself and being the healthiest version of yourself?
1000%. Okay, final question for you. You're creating a legacy. And you started this journey to support your son, but really to make it okay for him to be able to navigate, young people's parties without drinking. When you think about the legacy that you've now transitioned to, what is that? What is that message?
You know what? I think that it just shows you that anything is possible because having 30 countries walking with you, having people in Hollywood, that I have a lot of stars that wear sober is the new cool hoodies out and about, reaffirming that it's okay to be sober and to live your best life. It's really, it makes me very, now I can say proud. I wouldn't have been able to say that before because I just wouldn't have. And I just look back and I think, this started on a kitchen island with my sister and I, and we did a trademark. God knows why, like all these things that happened along the way, there was really no reason why, it's almost like it should never have gotten to this point, and it did. And I think it's because I was so lucky of all the people I met along the way. Mothers that have lost their children, women that have written books that are sober for kids to be able to read with their mothers. Um, there's just so much. And I think also I'm just the luckiest because for people to trust me with their deepest and darkest secrets is unbelievable.
Well, I so appreciate that you come at it from a place of gratitude. And Kim, the reality is that you are the one that creates that safe space. You are the one that invites people to celebrate. You are the one who invites people to see things through a different lens. And so, lucky or powerful?
I'm blessed.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that, it's, I just sometimes it's so surreal when I look at it and think
yeah,
I'm doing this.
yeah,
Who would have thought it was
yeah.
possible? And I got to tell you, over 10 years ago, a lot of people said to me, "You're wasting your time. You cannot say cool and sober in the same sentence." And here I am,
And here you are.
and I'm still here.
And thank you so much for bringing your joy and your gifts to us at this podcast. And man, our relationship is just going to carry forward from here because you are my kind of people. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us today. Because remember, no one ever regrets not drinking the morning after. And every decision that you make today shapes the smiles that you have tomorrow. Keep making choices that brighten your world and the world around you.